Mr. Speaker, sir, and thank you, distinguished senators. My name, for the record, is Elisha Ongoya. I'll be making the governor's final submissions. Mr. Speaker, sir, before I delve into the substantive part of my submissions, and because looking at the program of this House, this may be the last time I'm standing here to address on this matter, allow me, with great humility, to begin by thanking you, Mr. Speaker, and the distinguished senators who have given us audience despite the great time constraints that we have had to go through in making this case. I'll be failing in my responsibility for courtesy if I didn't thank the administrative staff, the secretariat staff of this Senate, who have given us significant support, both within this House and in the corridors of these precincts as we found our way around. Mr. Speaker, sir, at this juncture, allow me to proceed to the more substantive parts of the governor's closing submissions. Allow me to begin by pointing out that as a young Christian fellowshipping at Esrave Church of God deep in Vihiga County, and as a middle-aged Christian fellowshipping somewhere in Amalemba Church of God in Kakamega County, I have gathered some enduring lessons from Scripture, and I would start by drawing inspiration from those lessons. The wise man who authored the book of Proverbs, at chapter 18, verse 17, guides us as follows when we are confronted with matters such as this. In a lawsuit, the first to speak seems right until someone comes forward to cross-examine him. That ecclesiastical wisdom has found pragmatic rendition in these proceedings, as I will demonstrate shortly. Mr. Speaker, sir, the governor was presented in the opening remarks by the County Assembly's Council to this assembly, for lack of a better word, as some form of scoundrel. Fortunately, in this august House, both parties have had an opportunity to present documentary and electronic evidence. Mr. Speaker, sir, distinguished senators, when the history of this attempted impeachment of the governor of Meru County, Her Excellency Honorable Kawira Mwangaza, shall be authored, one word will be repeated in that historical text. That word is a Meru word, kibiri. I'm told, in its innocence, it is a stick that is used to stir porridge. Sadly, in that historical text that I've alluded to, that word will have no aura of innocence. I beg to pose the following questions to the hearts, the minds, and the conscience of these distinguished senators. Are we, in making a decision this evening, going to dignify the Kibiri movement that we have seen today by impeaching this governor? Are we, honorable distinguished senators, going to dignify the acts of Honorable Mpuru Waburi that you had occasion to watch today live by impeaching this governor? Honorable senators, are we today going to dignify the act of the honorable member for Buri constituency that we have seen today supporting the other acts of Mpuri Aburi that you had observed by impeaching this governor? Are we going to dignify the acts of the deputy governor from Meru County openly and in the company of the young people of this country that we ought to give proper moral guidance, calling a governor a prostitute? Are we going to dignify that person by impeaching this governor? The governor has been accused of being a leader who disrespects other leaders. Video clips of the alleged disrespect have allegedly been played here, including a song, Wenye Wivu Wajinyonge. On the other hand, the governor has demonstrated to you the sins that have been committed against her by those very leaders she is accused of disrespecting. Distinguished senators, in good conscience, are you going to vote that this governor is a greater sinner than she has been sinned against? In good conscience. How many of us can reconcile our conscience, distinguished senators, with the fact that it is the men you saw today uttering the words you saw them utter and projecting the actions that you saw them project as against the governor that have actually come to this house to complain against that governor? I've heard of the claim of pots calling kettle black. I never knew in my living history I would come across a pragmatic rendition of what that means. Today was my answer. I invite you to have that reflection, distinguished senators. I have asked myself, I invite these distinguished senators to ask themselves, Mr. Speaker, sir, where did these leaders get the moral high ground to invite this house, in view of the sins that they have committed against the governor, to find that the governor has sinned against them? Distinguished senators, technology has been deployed in these proceedings. We are beaming these proceedings live to the whole world by medium that will preserve them to eternity. How shall the members of this house, individually and collectively, account to their children and children's children that they ever dignified the acts of these people who have leveled a war against the governor by confirming the impeachment of the governor? We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the peace of our conscience to make a decision that takes that into account. Choices have consequences, or so it is a truism. By impeaching this governor, if you so decide, the logical consequence is that that person you saw chanting with the young men of Meru, calling the governor a prostitute, would rise to the office of governor. Is that the desirable outcome you want out of your decision this evening, distinguished senators? Members of the County Assembly have brought the governor here. I speak the governor's heart. We do not begrudge them. They have the power to do that. They have exercised that power. Have they rightly exercised that power? Distinguished senators, that decision lies in your hand. You are told that the governor did not present the evidence that she has given before you to the county assembly. Fortunately, this house is a house of record. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, you have fantastic rules of procedure that, of course, we can make better, as we have seen. And I would strongly recommend, hoping time will permit, that we relook at the timelines for impeachment of governors if we have to do absolute justice in terms of filings, in terms of argument of the case. These are reform issues because we are in continuous improvement as a society. But putting all factors on the scale, we have done well in presenting some records before this House. When you retire and before you vote tonight, I invite every senator to open volume number 4 of the County Assembly's documents and turn specifically to page number 146 of that volume and look at the conversation that is taking place at that page. This is the Hansard of the County Assembly of Meru of 25th October 2023. If you turn with me to page 146, you will see this conversation. Elias Mutuma, advocate for the governor, says, "Mine will be brief, but I will not proceed until we are given a ruling on the 2 issues raised by my seniors. We seek direction on how to table the evidence that we have and how we will get a ruling on the public participation. The governor is pleading to be given a chance to table her evidence." The Speaker, Honorable Ayub Bundi, says when your brother Omari was speaking, he mentioned a difference between honorable members and your team. He stated that he knows the division in this House and he cannot step on the other side. Anything you'd like to table in this House must go to the House Business Committee. You cannot do it when you're on that side. You must be on the side where the members are. I was wondering, Mr. Speaker, sir, how was Mr. Mutuma possibly supposed to get to the side where the members are? Was he supposed to organize a mini election in Meru County, become elected as senator for the temporary purpose of participating in these proceedings? I don't know. I am a career learner, and I learn every day. It is only allowed for honorable members. We are being told only honorable members are allowed to table evidence. You are not allowed to table evidence. We are going to make a reference to the Hansard systems because everything that you talk is being captured. You can proceed as the Speaker. The Speaker, we don't begrudge him. He had power to make a ruling. Mr. Speaker, just as you have power to make rulings here. Did he use that power correctly? That is the question I pose to the conscience of the men and women bestowed with the arduous responsibility of protecting devolved governance in this country, sitting in this House as distinguished senators. The conversation continues with Elias Mutuma, advocate for the governor, making an argument. My understanding, therefore, is that we will not lay the evidence that we have. The Speaker answers him, "How will you table it, Mr. Mutuma?" Mutuma is asking him, "You are the presiding officer in this House. Guide me on how to table." Mr. Mutuma is being challenged. "How will you do it? You are not an MCA. That is why MCAs enter through the main door, and you entered through the back door." This was no longer differentiation. This was apartheid. Discrimination on the basis of the door you entered through. Whoever entered through the main door had a chance to table evidence. Whoever entered through any other door was denied a right to table evidence. Mr. Mutuma, exercising the persistence of a lawyer that we teach in law schools, continues. My hope is now pleading hope. My hope is that you will guide me on how we will lay the evidence that we have, because I'm a stranger in this house. The speaker answers him, we are going to rely on the Hansard system. As you talk, be aware that you are giving your evidence. He says, in desperation, well-guided, a very well-trained lawyer. Whether you agree or disagree with the judge, you say most obliged, well-guided. May we then have a ruling before we proceed? Mr. Speaker, sir, distinguished senators, believe me or not, it is this assembly that has come here to ask you, why didn't they table their evidence before the assembly? We may agree or disagree with the governor on many things. We owe her a moral duty to be fair to her. The governor has been unfairly treated by the County Assembly of Meru, as demonstrated by the County Assembly's own records. And that is why we are here. You've been told in cross-examination, there are other women out there, Embu, Homa Bay, Nakuru, Kirinyaga. Are they also facing discrimination? Don't throw the gender card here. That's what the governor has been told in your hearing. Mr. Speaker, sir, distinguished senators, those things were said to the person you saw with your own eyes and felt with all your other senses, including the sense of hearing, being told what was going to be done to her by the Kibiri. Those things, those questions. One day, I will teach about the moral obligation of counsel in cross-examination, particularly when particular evidence is now available. Will this Senate, in good conscience, completely overlook the evidence of Honorable Mpuri Aburi in the presence of the Senator for Meru County, in the presence of the Deputy Governor of Meru County, in the presence of Honorable Mugambi Muridhania Rindikiri, demonstrating what they did with their hands holding the Kibiri against the governor? Shall we ignore that and say she's simply throwing a gender card? Shall we ignore the overwhelming evidence of the deputy governor chanting with youth in Meru, saying how the governor is a prostitute? Isn't that the locus classicus of a sexist remark? Will this Honorable Senate ignore the video clip that was played regarding that purported tree planting event at which no single seedling was seen being planted, but in which clear sexist remarks were made against the governor of Meru County? Mr. Speaker, sir, distinguished senators, before you is a fellow citizen, sinned in the matter you have experienced with your own senses and presence, being brought to trial before you. Allow me now to proceed and highlight the contradictions in the case of the County Assembly. Distinguished senators, when you retire in your private sessions, have these conversations among yourselves. Ask yourself this question, number one. The governor before you faces a charge of usurping the roles of other agencies in the county, doing the work of other functionaries in the county. Same governor then faces other charges that requires her to take responsibility for the acts and omissions of other functionaries in the county. How will you, distinguished senators, reconcile your sense of logic to that case? When you retire in your private chamber, distinguished senators, reconcile this for me kindly, because I'm a career learner. The governor is accused of making payments to county employees who are named 4 in number. Those county employees, one of them steps here and says he is complaining that he was paid. He told you that yesterday. Then you will be confronted with evidence that he is the one who went to court to obtain an order to compel the county government to pay him. That person who is complaining. I've been struggling whether I'm as law learner, good people. But I want you, in good conscience, to tell me, if you sat in the shoes of this governor, how will you learn a lesson from that? Because this governor is a human being. She's not a perfect person. She can make mistakes. But she must be confronted by logical claims from which she can draw logical lessons to become a better leader. That's what we do in oversight institutions such as this. But if you confront this governor with this kind of contradictions, how does she sit with her team and tell them this is the program of action on how we can become better? Same governor is accused of disobeying a court order because that payment was delayed. And the act of purging was the payment must be made. While at that, and I'll reveal this issue later, I am glad that in front of me, including yourself, Mr. Speaker, sir, are honorable members of the Senate of Kenya who have served as governors. I have a plea to those particular ones. Please convey the message to your members in your deliberations of just how many cases the governor of your county, being you, was named as a respondent. If for each of those cases, the governor was to be brought here and be impeached, how many governors shall survive in this country? Is that even a sustainable way of oversighting counties? The office of governor is a standard respondent, so to speak, in virtually all claims made against the county government. At the end of it all, as was the case in the case of the 4 petitioners in Meru, a specific officer of the county government was singled out and told it was your duty, the county secretary, to ensure that these things are done. Go back and comply and come back here to tell me you have complied. Shall we ignore that direction of the court? My learned colleague, Dr. Mutembei Thiankolu, has a legal philosophy called legal sophistry. Legal sophistry, according to Mutembei Thiankolu, is a process where people make technical legal arguments that technically make sense. But when you look at them substantively, they are unjust arguments. Sadly, he has advanced those arguments here today. We don't begrudge him. He is acting on his client's instructions. The Senate, you are to act on the instructions of the Constitution. Shall you buy into that legal sophistry, or shall you buy into the Constitution? Mr. Speaker, my side is not very good. When my 30 minutes reach and it's shown, I'll beseech that my attention be drawn to it so that I manage my time better. I know I still have some time.
Yeah, you have 35 minutes to go.
Thank you. That's consistent with what my chronometer is telling me. Let me deal with the Assembly's witnesses one by one. Arimi, Mwaki, Paul, you'll find the person who came before you denying the obvious fact that his salaries was paid pursuant to a court order, even when he is told to read the court order saying the salary be paid. You'll find him complaining that he was in fact paid, that is his grievance. Why did you pay me? You'll find him the person who went to court to get an order to be paid. You'll find him saying, although I'm complaining that I was paid, I did not return that money to the county government. You'll be told, impeach this governor on the strength of that evidence. He then plays a video clip of the county's first gentleman, apparently saying that some people will not be returned to work. His name is not mentioned in that clip. The governor is not present in that meeting. The person present in that meeting and not condemning those things is the deputy governor, the person whose case has been argued here more than the case of the county assembly. I sat here and I was shocked at how the county assembly's lawyers spent copious minutes arguing the case of the deputy governor than the case of the assembly. But as the person who was in that meeting, Paul Arimi, for the sake of this impeachment, is prepared to forgive the deputy governor who was present there. He's prepared to crucify the governor who is not seen in that clip. Allow me to engage with my views on Honorable Mawira Evans Kara, the person who moved this impeachment motion. He has come here to tell you how Okolea Katoto Kameru is such a bad thing. You have seen his active role in Okolea Katoto Kameru up to August this year. You'll be told, impeach this governor on the strength of the testimony of that person. At some point, I asked my colleagues, what kind of people do these assembly members think senators are? Don't they have some residual respect for senators? Doesn't there come a time where you say, it's okay, I brought a very big case here, but I was misled. Now I am withdrawing limb 1, limb 2, limb 3, because I'm embarrassed by my own evidence. Let us focus on the following 2 issues so that we save time. They didn't do that. We don't begrudge them. We take confidence in the fact that this distinguished house is answerable to the Constitution and shall be faithful to the Constitution. Think about this, distinguished senators. Mawira Evans Kara Mheshimiwa tells you that Nefat Kinyua is the governor's brother-in-law. He then invites you to take judicial notice of that fact. It is in the public domain. I don't know. If I had a chance to engage senators one by one, I would have asked Senator Halwale, do you know that fact in the public domain? But I have no chance to get an answer to that. Good people, in legal practice, we take judicial notice of notorious facts. Facts like the sun rises from the east and sets in the west. Only a fool can counter-argue it. The fact that elections in this country were held on 9th of August 2020 is a notorious fact. No one can counter-argue it. To your utter consternation, at least mine, Mawira Evans Kara is asking you to elevate the marital status of Nefat Kinyua to that and take judicial notice of it. Who do they take senators for? Will you buy into this, distinguished senators? Even when confronted with evidence of a formal marriage certificate, he proceeds with this theory that his public domain hypothesis of the marriage of Nefat Kinyua outweighs that marriage certificate. I would have hoped that as people who have a duty to this Senate, the council who presented Evans Mawira here would have at least withdrawn that part of their claim to save us time. Now think about the minutes I'm spending arguing this fact. We have to do it because they have put it to us. They disrespect this Senate. That's why they're saying they must preoccupy your precious time with this issue to the wire. The star witness, Honorable Mawira Evans, then introduces an alleged relationship between the first gentleman and Edwin Murangiri. He calls Edwin a nephew to the first gentleman. He's then asked, okay, somebody's nephew ordinarily is the sister's son. What is the name of the mother of Edwin so that we can see whether he's a sibling? He says, I don't know that name. Let me put it this way, honorable senators. This country inherited a common law tradition at the beginning of its legal system. We have shifted significantly from the common law tradition because of our transformative written constitution. In the old common law, there was the doctrine of parliamentary supremacy. In the new order, we have the doctrine of constitutional supremacy. But I say this, even in the traditions where parliament enjoyed supremacy, surely it had no power by fiat to impose relationships upon people. Tell somebody, this is your brother from today. This is your, you have been told to make that finding yourselves as Senate, that Edwin Murangiri is the nephew to the first gentleman. So what do you do when this man begins claiming inheritance from this family by virtue of your decision? Because these things have consequences. People will present this Hansard to courts in future to prove relationships. Shall we manage the aftermaths? These people did not respect this house. This witness insisted that county vehicles were destroyed in an Okolea event. We asked him, some senators asked him, vehicles in this country are identified by their registration numbers. There is no other method of identifying vehicles. I said, no, he has another method. Which is this method? The method is the affidavit of number 113748 PC Kevin Wafula is a method of recognizing or attributing ownership to vehicles. That was novel. I think the County Assembly's star witness elevated jokes to legendary heights. The witness tried to introduce a theory that the governor had employed Edwin Murangiri and Nefat Kinyua, who he claimed were the governor's relatives. We've shown there was no evidence they were, and as a matter of fact, they were not. It then turned out that these people were employed in 2017 and 2016 respectively, that the governor employed them in the county in advance of her election as governor. I'm just wondering, good people, what do this protect Senate to be? Can somebody in good conscience sustain this case to the wire, as the council for the assembly have done? Dr. Gitonga Jeremiah Ruturi came to this house. I would invite you to look at the affidavit of that witness, but I'll not read it because of time. The very first paragraph of that witness, the very first paragraph, when his memory is still clearest, he told the advocate drafting his affidavit that he is a director of IV Healthcare. When he stood here and was told to introduce himself, he took an oath before this Senate, and from his mouth perjured himself on oath, saying, I am a director of IV Healthcare. Learned Kanzo Dr. Okubasu, exercising that power in the book of Proverbs chapter 17, confronted him in cross-examination. He asked him, if this Senate were to take the liberty and call a Form CR12 from the company's registry, would you appear on that CR12 as a director of IV Healthcare? He stuttered, and in that moment spoke about 3 other companies completely not mentioned in that affidavit. It turned out he was not a director of IV Healthcare. At paragraph 8 of his affidavit, which was read to him, he says that he was surprised upon arrival in China that the delegation that the governor had recommended to IV Healthcare were not a technical team. When he arrived in China, he learned that. It turned out the man never went to China. He stuttered. Honorable Mugambi Rindikiri Murwidania will be remembered by this House as a leader who was captured on video supporting the most sexually offensive remarks against a woman in the 21st century before the country's Senate, asserted by another leader, Mpuri Aburi, the honorable member. These are the people that we have been told have mounted a convincing case. Let's face it. I used to be taught, Mr. Speaker, sir, that no one makes good deals with bad guys. Can you get credible evidence from these most incredible fellow citizens? Is it possible? Allow me, Mr. Speaker, sir, to now deal with the case, the charges presented by the County Assembly before this House. From the very outset, allow me to very humbly invite the honorable senators to administer a caution to themselves individually as you consider this matter. Individual senators, please caution yourself that the case of the County Assembly cannot be permitted to mutate from the charges that were prosecuted at the County Assembly. It cannot be allowed. Rule 19 of the 5th schedule of the standing orders, which provides for the procedure of the impeachment process before the whole House, as we are doing now, prescribes that in presenting its evidence, the Assembly shall not introduce any new evidence that was not a part of the allegations against the governor by the County Assembly, as forwarded by the Speaker of the County Assembly to the Speaker of the Senate. This case cannot be allowed to mutate. There must be logic behind this. The logic is there must be definitiveness on what the governor is responding to. Allow me to deal with counts 1 and 5 together. These counts are found in the Assembly's documents, Volume 1. Count 1 has 4 specific allegations. Allegation number 1, that the governor has violated certain provisions of the Constitution and the law, they are specified there, I'll not read them, by engagement, connivance, and stroke or complicity in the following. First, honorable senators, allow me to tell you this charge is duplex. It is a defective charge. If not for anything else, Mr. Speaker, sir, this means that you must discourage this form of drafting. It is poor drafting. The governor has to elect whether she is going to defend herself against engaging in those acts, against conniving in those acts, or against complicity in those acts. In law, that's an impossible task. What the Senate, my apologies, what the County Assembly has done is to cast a wide net, in the words of the fishing vocabulary, in the hope that it may catch crabs, fish, and perhaps some snakes, so that you say, anyway, we may have grabbed a lot of snakes, but there's one fish, so vote for this fish. It's a poor way of dealing with a case of this nature. A case of this nature requires military precision in the charges. Be that as it may, the governor is accused of doing those things in the form of embezzlement of county funds through the governor's sisters, Rose Kenya Gwantai and Miriam Gwantai, brother Kenneth Gwantai Muragiri, brother-in-law Nefat Kinywa, and nephew to the governor's husband, Edwin Mutuma Muragiri, all of whom are now collectively referred to as the governor's relatives, period. But the governor comes to this court and says, no, I want to give you evidence to show that I have not embezzled any funds through these people. How will I do this? I will give you vouchers to show what each of these people is being paid for. That is a sufficient answer to this charge. You are then told, no, he has not accounted for 70 million shillings. Honorable senators, where is the charge for failure to account for 70 million shillings that the governor is supposed to respond to in that form? Number two, where is the charge of failure to account for 78 million shillings? Because if that charge came as such, then the governor would have been under an obligation to secure her finance people, to give her material in respect of all the 78 million. Then we can interrogate the material one by one. Is this credible? Is this not credible? And so forth. Once we have supplied that, we must show a causal connection between that money and the person of the governor. The governor was taken through a fairly humiliating exercise. She was reduced to a clerical officer. You are senators, you are state officers, you get impressed. You know the clerical process of dealing with a single impressed at a time. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you are personally to be held responsible for the impressed process in this house, would you possibly transact the business of this house? That is a matter this house must reflect on in your private moment before you take a vote. Even the clerk, who is the administrative head of this house, if he was told to personally explain each of the individual signatures in every signature of 100 vouchers, would that be possible? Allow me to tell you why this charge is premature. An audit process presents a different environment, because an audit process, the auditor comes, receives documents, reviews them, asks questions, people go back to the drawing board, review their own material, come back. The whole process takes time until we have a report. Now here is where you file documents and you are bound by those documents. There's no feedback. So in this case, we have no audit report. The County Assembly should have been patient for the auditor to audit these accounts, raise specific audit queries, fail to get answers to those audit queries, then mount a case based on the specific audit queries that are not answered. What has happened by counsel for the Assembly before you is a sad commentary on how not to prosecute an impeachment motion. The governor is accused.
Council, you have 15 minutes.
That's okay, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you so much. The governor is accused of withdrawing county funds under the guise of payment for various supplies by the governor's relatives, yet they, the governor's relatives, are ineligible to tender for or supply any goods or services to the county. Council for the Assembly, in cross-examining the governor, completely misled this House, and I was saddened because council have a duty of candor. Despite our sectarian interests, council have a duty of candor. When you retire, honorable senators, look at volume 2 of the county assembly's documents. When you look at volume 2 of the county assembly's documents, you will discover that from page 1 to page 29, from page 1 to page 29 is a letter by Thuranira Salesio Mutuma to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and some attachments. That is crucial, honorable senators. Among those attachments is a table prepared by the said Salesio, running from page 4 to page 14. Page 4 to page 14 is not an IFMIS extract. Page 4 to page 14 is a table prepared in Word format, in Microsoft Word format by Salesio. That's important because that question was put to the Senate as if this is an IFMIS extract. It is in this table, good senators, that at page 6, in row number 4, you will find an entry called hospital supplies. This is Salesio writing those words. It is not IFMIS in which this is entered. It is Salesio. A person who was not brought here, we were wondering whether he's a real human being or he could just be taking care of his God somewhere. At page 11, in row 3, you will find hospital supplies, another entered record by Salesio, not from the IFMIS. The governor's case before you is this, that if you proceed to page 17 to 29, where the IFMIS extract is, and you look at the corresponding voucher numbers to these things Salesio has written, you will find in the IFMIS extract, these are hospitality supplies. That's the governor's case before you. So the impression created by my learned colleague, Dr. Mudomi Thiankolu, that this entry hospital supplies is an entry made by the county staff in IFMIS is a pure lie, sadly from council. When you continue looking at those charges, I'm more interested in count 1 because the other counts, they are the kind of counts that I can say fall on their own weight. But this one here, somebody tried to point at invoices in a manner that was rather frustrating for anyone who understands this process. In fact, when I sat where I was sitting preparing my submissions, because I was not in this house, I presumed that either council for the assembly did not understand the impress system of government. Fortunately for us, this Senate works on impress systems. Count C, sorry, allegation C. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, before I forget. So the charge here is making various supplies, and that's why we supply only vouchers that show you what these payments are for. They are not for supplies. They are for particular recurrent expenses, that's all. So we are not accounting for 78 million shillings. We are just responding to this allegation. Thirdly, we are accused of paying full salary and benefits. In fact, those vouchers and those IFMIS entries are only relevant in respect to allegations A and B. When it comes to C, I have already mentioned to you that these payments were made pursuant to a court order. The lesser I say about that, the better. Count D says diversion or misuse of county resources, including funds or motor vehicles, to run the governor's private entity. You asked yourselves, which motor vehicle? You are told no. Go to the affidavit of police constable. You'll get it there. A very strange way of identifying a motor vehicle. I'm open to learning. I was not willing to learn that one. Allow me to demonstrate. Sorry? The Speaker, do I understand I have 10 minutes? Thank you so much. The governor was accused of nepotism and related unethical practices. Before I argue that, when counsel for the county assembly, Mr. Ngwele, stood here and told you that they have proved that Kathure Rukania is among those who are paid money that's not accounted for, I asked myself, look at the 39 allegations before you, 39, and point out to me where the name Kathure Rukania appears in the 39 allegations, so that the governor can now take the task of explaining him. The county assembly has taken a strange stance before this assembly. I'm saddened if this is the trajectory of impeachment. Charge 2 is about nepotism and related charges. One of the claims here is that the governors send her unqualified technical team to China. Even when the county assembly witnesses are given their own documents saying the purpose of this trip or this request for clearance was to prepare and guide on the visit, they will express words. They insisted that no, ignore those words in their own documents. They were shown the invitation letter to China at page 79 of volume 2 of the assembly documents. They were asked, show us which part of this invitation is inviting technical cancer experts. They were unable to show it, but they have come here in closing submissions to insist that that was the nature of the invitation. It is a rule of ethics in trial advocacy that an advocate must never submit outside the evidence. Counsel for the assembly have breached that rule of ethics. They have said that the governor misrepresented to the Minister of Devolution that these were technical people. They are told, okay, these people are said in a letter dated 29th May 2023 to be technical staff. Who is technical staff? Isn't the governor's security a technical security staff? Isn't the governor's PA a technical administrative staff? Where was that word technical staff defined as a term of art? They can't show you. Then they say, we ask them, okay, the next week, the same county government writes the Minister of Devolution specifying these people's names and their designation, which you confirm is correct. So if they intended to mislead, where are they now clearly spelling out these people's designation before these people travel? They can't answer, but in their final submission, they still insist there was misrepresentation, a poor way of advancing the jurisprudence on impeachment. You'll be told this nepotism is in the engagement and employment of Edwin Mutuma Murangiri, a nephew to the governor. I've spoken about that. The lesser I say about it, the better. Nefat Kinyua, the governor's brother-in-law, in public knowledge. I mean, what kind of behavior is this? Assigning diplomatic duties. You'll be told the evidence that diplomatic duties were assigned is in a Facebook post. You are told, okay, read that Facebook post. Where does it assign diplomatic duties to the governor's relatives. It is not there. It's those pictures you see there. If you look at them carefully, they are speaking. Those pictures are speaking about diplomatic duties. Surely, a Senate to be engaged in that, I was a little embarrassed. That's 5 minutes. That's okay. Bullying, vilification, demeaning other leaders. We have shown what those leaders have done to the governor. The less I say about it, the better. They actually dared and threw the first stone when they had sinned more. Illegal appointments, I'll talk about this because this is statutory and I have an obligation to guide this Senate on the law. I will refer this Senate to section 64 of the County Government Act. It says, acting appointments shall be made only by the lawful appointing authority and for a specified period. It then says, nothing in this section, nothing that previous section has said, shall prevent a public officer, like the governor here, like the county secretary, those are public officers, from deploying another officer to perform the duties vested in another office during temporary absence, during a vacance that office. You will listen to the case of the county assembly. They will keep quiet on section 64, subsection 4, as if it does not exist. But let's move just further, senators. Subsection 5 says, if it comes to the attention of the County Public Service Board that a public officer has purportedly made an acting appointment, delegation, or deployment, as the case may be, contrary to the provisions of this section, the County Public Service Board shall take necessary corrective action. This is something that the law prescribes its own procedure of remedying. Why would we use a sledgehammer of an impeachment when the law actually prescribes a lesser restrictive measure that can solve the problem? That's what the county assembly has engaged you in. Naming a public road after the husband. Show us the road. Oh, let's go to Facebook. You'll find the... Surely, Senate has been engaged in that argument. I thought they would drop it in their final argument. Council stood here and insisted, we have produced compelling evidence in a Facebook post. That's elevating jokes to new heights. Contempt of the assembly. 1. Tasked to explain where that offense is found in statute. The witness, of course, stuttered. The governor has contextualized all her responses to the county assembly. May I just inform this Senate? You have summoned the governors here who have said, let us go to court and interpret the scope of your powers as Senate to invite us, to interrogate us. And you have engaged them in court. That is development of our law. That is not contempt of the assembly. The governor ought to be praised. Is this governor a peacemaker? You saw her with MCS, launching projects in their wards, giving them the opportunity to shine by being the ones who read those projects. You are politicians. You know what that means in terms of dignifying and improving the stature of those MCS. I say, true to her word, this governor is a foremost peacemaker. It matters not whether she shall be brought here 100 times. You cannot victimize her because those who torment her are tireless in their torments against her. I beseech you, senators, to vote against each of these charges overwhelmingly in the interest of your individual and collective conscience. I rest the governor's case.
Senator Okiya Mutata, kindly take your seat. Take your seat, Senator Muma. Honorable Senators, ladies and gentlemen, following the conclusion of the closing remarks by the Counsel for the County Assembly and that of the Governor, Rule 27 of the Rules of Procedure when considering the proposed removal of Governor in plenary provides as follows: that the Senate shall proceed into a camera session to deliberate on the issues raised. I now therefore direct that all members of public, including the media, to withdraw from the galleries and any form of broadcast from the chamber to cease forthwith. The camera session will be held for only 10 minutes, after which the open session will resume as per the hearing program that has been circulated. Specifically, the open session will resume at exactly